We'll start with the more strange and disturbing, and as we move down the chart, the mysteries will become increasingly terrifying and horrific. I made this iceberg myself, and it delves into some of the most bone-chilling content humanity has ever created. Let's start with the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Fun Time Kids Day Care. On January 25, 2015, in a now redacted thread, Reddit user DiscoGodfather6922 posted a picture of a brightly colored daycare called Fun Time Kids Daycare in the Salt Lake City subreddit. As the name implied, it was supposed to be a daycare, but in the caption, the Disco Godfather mentioned that he hadn't seen a kid on the property in 5 years. There wasn't anything worrying in the picture, yet that single picture would continue to cause speculation for years. Other Salt Lake City locals weighed in. One advised Disco Godfather to stay away because it was a CIA black site. Another admitted they had not seen a single person there in 10 years. One mail carrier claimed that children were always asleep when he showed up. One of the Redditors decided to check the building. He wrote that the windows were boarded up with cardboard, and when he peeked in, he saw children inside. But not everyone was letting their imagination get away from them. Some users said the place was just a regular daycare, and people were just getting carried away. But this only fanned more flames when another user pointed out that all the users saying the building was normal had only registered their accounts that day. As hundreds of posts poured in, the story took a life of its own. Some took to making a slew of harassing calls to the daycare. One even told local newspapers the daycare was connected to trafficking, and many took to making bizarre allegations on the daycare's Google review page. Some were a little more upfront and started showing up to peer into the windows. A couple of Reddit users posted personal information about the owner. Doxing was the final straw, and Reddit admins stepped in and deleted the original thread from the Salt Lake City subreddit. But that only made them more suspicious, and the conversations and investigation into Fun Time Kids continued in conspiracy subreddits and 4chan. They even formed groups and planned to storm the building. Meanwhile, the only citation against them is a 2014 complaint about weeds. There's also a reason the building was a bit run down and child-free. It all boiled down to business. Funtime Kids Daycare was in a low-income area and catered to low-income families who couldn't always afford to send their children in, hence the sparse number of children. Mix that in with a little profit to make an aesthetically pleasing playground, and you get the picture of a business trying its best. But this information hasn't done much to stop the online conspiracies. Max Headroom Incident. It was shortly after 9 p.m. on November 22, 1987. Families in Chicago turned in to WGN-TV, the 9 o'clock news, to listen to popular local sportscaster Dan Rowan's highlights on a game, when suddenly the screen went dark. When the TV screens flickered back to life, Dan Rowan was gone. In his place was a bizarre figure in a suit swaying erratically. The figure wore a mask with a frozen grin and sunglasses. Behind him, there was a swiveling corrugated metal panel, but there was no sound, just a loud buzz. 17 seconds later, the screen went dark again and returned to the WGN TV studio.
Well, if you're wondering what's happened.
A puzzled Dan Rowan said what everyone was thinking. It turned out that the weird masked man and his corrugated panel were not a segment on the channel. WGN-TV had been hacked. Fortunately, studio engineers were on hand to regain control, but no one was around to stop them the next time it happened. It happened just 2 hours later at another station, WTTW. They were airing an episode of the Doctor Who series when the signal was taken over and the masked figure appeared. This time he was heard talking about unrelated topics, including the real Max Headroom's advertisements for New Coke, the TV series Clutch Cargo, and a late-night talk show on Cinemax, all while acting erratically. With nobody around to stop the transmission, it just kept going. The hijackers finally ended the transmission after 88 seconds, but that was only after the masked figure's encore, presenting his to a woman along with a fly swatter and getting her to spank him while he cried and screamed. This bizarre hijacking became known as the Max Headroom incident. It garnered widespread media coverage and outrage, and a criminal investigation was opened, but the case quickly went cold, and the people behind it were never found. Walt Disney's frozen head. It has been almost 60 years since Walt Disney, the man behind the happiest place in the world, died. Yet, rumors continue to swirl about him. The most popular is that Walt Disney has been cryogenically frozen to be brought back to life once the science has been developed. In some versions, just his head was preserved. In others, his entire body was preserved. While some believe he is kept in an undisclosed location, some know exactly where he is, under the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Or so they say. Yet, Walt Disney's ashes are said to be buried in a small private garden at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. So, where did these stories come from? In 1964, Robert Ettinger published The Prospect of Immortality, a book about cryogenic preservation. It was the first time the concept of bodies being preserved and reanimated got out, and it hooked the public. 2 years later, the beloved popular animator died from complications related to surgery for lung cancer. But if there were one person imaginative enough to decide to be cryogenically preserved, it would be an animator whose characters always snapped back to life. 2 books helped fan this rumor into facts: 1986's Disney World by Leonard Mosley and 1993's Walt Disney, Hollywood's Dark Prince by Mark Elliott. These biographies claimed that Walt Disney was fascinated by cryogenics. Elliott's book even claimed Walt had spoken to his family about it. He also wrote that Walt became obsessed with his death after he was diagnosed with lung cancer and his health started to decline. The story made sense in a sick kind of way. Walt's direct family members denied having any conversation about cryogenics with him. They also say there wasn't any time for him to have been obsessed with cryogenics. 32 days after his cancer was discovered, he was already dead. But truth has a way of not getting as much attention, and the rumors have continued to spread far and wide. It also didn't help that Disney notoriously hated funerals and that his funeral was restricted to just family. This only left room for speculation that he had something to hide. Area 51 Caller. Coast to Coast AM was an entertaining late-night radio show by American broadcaster Arthur Bell. It was a popular talk show known for entertaining discussions of conspiracy theories, UFOs, and pseudoscience, the topics that would earn a quirked brow at the time. Not only did Arthur encourage callers and guests to express those opinions, but he was also one of the few talk show hosts who did not screen incoming calls, so all kinds of wacky calls came in.
Well, see, as you can now tell, I don't screen calls, so what happened, obviously, was that I answered the phone just at the very instant that you had been ringing, as long as they were going to let you ring.
Yeah.
It makes sense that when one guy had questionable opinions on Area 51, Arthur Bell was the one to call. The call came in on the night of September 11th, 1997. The man claimed that he was a former Area 51 employee. He frantically explained that he had discovered an unknown threat and conspiracy in Area 51, and his life was in danger by even talking about it.
They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51. The disasters that are coming, the military, the government knows about them.
Bell lost connection at a point, and the network was completely cut off. Meanwhile, the caller's voice became increasingly agitated. Then the broadcast went silent. 20 minutes later, Bell was back on air and very confused. Had the people after Mel gotten him? There was no way to find out. Fast forward 7 months, and there's a break in the case. Bell received another call from a man called Brian. This time he wasn't agitated and had a confession to make. The earlier call was a hoax. But that only raised more questions than answers. Was that the same guy? He could be any Tom, Dick, or Harry who had just called and claimed to be him. Except he sounded exactly like the Area 51 caller. While no one was sure if the earlier call wasn't a hoax either, the transmission going out during the call was just the right kind of creepy to make the call look real. Whatever the case, this dark mystery has continued to puzzle many. Level 2. JCM Farming. When you hear the word farm, you're probably thinking chickens, a bunch of black and white cows, and a farmer wearing dungarees. What you're not thinking of is a mysterious secret farm with a no-fly zone. All anyone knows about JCM Farming is what they put on their wiki. They are a private company that operates an 80-acre olive farm near Indio in Coachella Valley, California. A 24-foot-long, 14-foot-thick wall surrounds the property. Just in case someone makes it over the wall, a partial moat, guard dogs, and armed guards are waiting on the other end. Too bad no one has seen any of it. That doesn't mean JCM Farming isn't serious about keeping people off its property. Even those in the air aren't safe. In 2009, they sued 15 hot air balloon companies for flying low over their hyper-secure compound, even though the Federal Aviation Administration found that the balloons did not violate aviation law. JCM also threatened to sue anyone nearby who allowed balloons to land on their property. More than a dozen hot air balloon companies went out of business or received court orders not to fly in the area. The result was that an area that used to be a major tourist attraction for hot air balloon flights is no longer. JCM Farming even sued an airline service for flying too low over their walls. The U.S. Department of Agriculture had contracted the airline to drop sterile insects. The company ended up getting a lifetime restraining order. In 2014, JCM Farming was again in court, this time targeting a bed and breakfast in La Quinta. JCM Farming owned a home right next door. They claimed that the B&B would increase crime, traffic, and noise. JCM's desperation to keep people at arm's length, or at least behind a 14-foot thick wall, has only increased curiosity about what's happening inside. They have been linked to the CIA. There are rumors that it is a private retreat for high-net-worth individuals, or that the JCM might be up to something illegal. Think Jeffrey Epstein or Diddy. But some think the JCM is just rich and a little bit cuckoo. Whatever it is, JCM's lips are sealed, and all we can do is guess. Solway Firth Spaceman. The year is 1964, and there are no smartphones. You took multiple pictures with rows of film and hoped that the pictures turned out right when you had them developed. But when English amateur photographer Jim Templeton went in to get the 3 pictures he'd taken of his 5-year-old daughter during a day trip to the marsh, he was told that there was a mysterious figure in the background of one picture. A figure that looked like a man in a spacesuit. Templeton was surprised. Apart from his wife and 2 daughters, there had been no one else at the marsh when he took the pictures. That added more to the mystery, and the picture made it to the local newspaper. But many believed it was all made up until Kodak vetted Templeton's camera and the original negatives. Whoever appeared behind his daughter was real. The mysterious figure was dubbed the Solway Firth Spaceman, and the picture went viral. As viral as anything can go in 1964. It appeared in newspapers and TV. After the picture blew up, 2 strangers in dark suits who claimed to be government officials showed up and tried to get Templeton to admit the pictures were a hoax. But Templeton was adamant that he hadn't made it up. He stuck to his guns till he died at 91, convinced that a spaceman had been in the marsh that day. But 3 years later, the case was cracked wide open. And while there were no spacemen, Templeton had also not made the image up. Here's what happened. While Templeton was taking pictures of his daughter with his large camera, he didn't notice his wife, Annie, step into the frame. A different picture showed her wearing a light blue sleeveless dress. With her back to the camera and the photograph overexposed, her blue dress would have looked white as the Solway Firth spaceman's suit looked.
Their arm is protruding into the light. There's no shadow on their actual arm, almost like you're doing this.
One of the greatest mysteries of the 1960s might have just been an accidental photobomb. Secret Earth. Do you know some parts of the world are not meant to be seen? Thanks to technology like Google Earth, these secret parts of the Earth were suddenly open to the public. Places like an island belonging to a billionaire sheik with his name carved in, or a pair of lips just out in the Sudan desert. But there were also some very mysterious things the public found. Things that were involved in government conspiracies, secret military bases, and bizarre nods to satanic worship. In an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, there's a 1,200-foot wide pentagram etched into the ground. The pentagram is a popular symbol linked to satanic worship, Wicca, and black magic. So once this Google photo got out, there were murmurs of devil worship and forbidden sacrifice. But some said it was an abandoned air missile site that the Russian military had used. They were the closest to the right answer. It turns out that the Soviet-era Russians loved the symbols of stars so much that they put them on everything: their flag, monuments, and even buildings. So when they wanted to outline a park, they didn't think much before deciding on a star. After it was abandoned, this star park fell into ruin. Next is Vostok Island, a small uninhabited island in the central Pacific Ocean. If you're wondering why it looks like someone had run a black marker on it, CIA classified style, you're not the only one. That's exactly how Vostok Island appears on Google Maps. Clearly, someone had to be hiding something. Theories about what could be hidden on the island flared up, covering everything from secret military bases to human trafficking. Well, it was none of those things. Vostok Island wasn't even blacked out. The trees were just so dense and dark that it looked like a black hole. But it's not everything that's so easily explained. Near the Thule Air Base in Greenland, there's a blackened patch of burned ice caused by an explosion and fire. The site of this incident is very hard to make out on Google Earth, and it's not because of a couple dark trees. It's because of a controversial incident now known as Thulegate. On January 21, 1968, a United States Air Force B-52 bomber was carrying 4 nuclear bombers across Greenland when the cabin caught fire, causing the plane to crash. The crash broke open the explosives, releasing its nuclear and contaminating the area with radioactive material. This crash happened 7 miles away from the Thule Air Base, a territory of Denmark with a strict nuclear-free policy that prohibited the presence of any nuclear weapons in Denmark or its territories. In short, the Danes were not pleased. However, the US and Danish governments released statements that the plane was not on a routine mission over Greenland and had only passed there because of an emergency. Nothing says emergency like a plane catching fire. No one thought much of this for almost 3 decades, when declassified United States documents revealed that the Danish Prime Minister, H.C. Hansen, had permitted the U.S. to transport nuclear weapons into Thule, directly contradicting Denmark's earlier statement and their strict nuclear-free policy. The Thulegate political scandal was born. It was made worse by surviving Danish workers seeing compensation for long-term health problems resulting from their exposure to radiation during the cleanup. Many of them died from cancer. But there's one more part to this incident. Not all the explosives were recovered. The nuclear fuel components of one of the bombs disappeared after the crash. While there's little chance of it detonating, its current location remains a mystery. Level 3. Markovian Parallax Denigrate. The year is 1996. Dolly the sheep has become the first mammal to be successfully cloned from an adult cell, and one of the internet's oldest mysteries began with an early internet spam. It all happened on an early internet forum called Usenet. Hundreds of messages suddenly appeared in user communities. While the messages read like a pile of words mashed together, they did have one thing in common. Whether in the title or somewhere in the body of each post were the words Markovian Parallax Denigrate, sometimes grouped, other times in different parts of the message. Cyberneticists, programmers, and other specialists frequented Usenet. On paper, they were the right group to decrypt and uncover the Markovian Parallax Denigrate message, but even they were left scratching their heads. With time, the mystery of Markovian Parallax Denigrate was forgotten and lost to time. That was until 2006, when a since-deleted article about it appeared on Wikipedia. Online sleuths started looking into it, but at Google's public Usenet archives, only one of the hundreds of messages remained. The name and the sender's email address got many tongues wagging: Susan Lindauer. Susan was a former journalist who was arrested in 2004 for serving as an agent of Saddam Hussein's government. The case was dropped after a psychiatric evaluation found that she suffered from paranoia and delusions of grandeur.
And here I am today. I want to say to Americans that what I did was always good for Homeland security and Middle Eastern security.
Susan went on to write a self-published book called Extreme Prudence about her time working with the CIA to contact the Iraqi government. At the time, the Markovian Parallax Denigrate spam message got out. Susan said that she was a CIA handler and that she knew the identity of the Pan Am 103 bomber. But not long after Susan's connection to the spam message was discovered, the Wikipedia page on Markovian Parallax Denigrate was deleted. It was starting to look like they were onto something. Conspiracy theories swirled around, including claims that the spam mail was part of the code used by Islamists in preparing for the attacks. It would have made sense if Susan hadn't denied having anything to do with the Markovian Parallax Denigrate. If there's one thing we know about Susan, she wouldn't pretend she wasn't involved. As for the Markovian Parallax Denigrate Wikipedia page getting deleted, it was because the page lacked credible sources, not because anyone was hiding anything. Then another clue appeared: the USWP part of the email address. The acronym stands for the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. And what do you know? Susan Lindauer was a graduate student. But she also didn't know about the spam emails. Her email was most likely spoofed to hide the poster's identity. This elusive figure is believed to be a prankster, a programmer, or an experimental chatbot. The whole thing is still a mystery. Happy Valley Dream Survey. In early 2015, strange posters appeared all over Willamette Valley in Portland, Oregon. The posters proclaimed that the Willamette Valley Dream Survey was looking into a rash of weird dreams and asked anyone experiencing them to call in and describe their dreams. Those who made the call got a voicemail and an automated woman prompting the caller to leave detailed accounts of their dreams.
Please leave a detailed account of your dream after the tone.
That's it. There was no mention of the Willamette Valley Dream Survey on Google, and those who looked up the phone number found it was linked to a German language immersion summer camp in the state. But the school said that the number was a Google phone account that the school no longer uses. There is very little to go on to find out why they wanted to know people's dreams. The posters were forgotten until the pandemic of April 2020. Reddit user Aliens posted a picture of some flyers he saw, but this time they were labeled Happy Valley Dream Survey and had an email address with a different phone number. A search of the email address went to a Reddit page with 2 main posts deleted. Calling the line still led to an automated message, but this time when you ended the call, you got a text thanking you for participating in the dream survey. There was also one more twist. Some people who called the line got calls from this number during the middle of the night, but it only lasted seconds, leaving barely any time for the phone to get answered. Many Redditors were trying to figure out who was behind this. 2 of the most prominent figureheads were aliens and one Reggie. But one night, both accounts were suddenly deleted and wiped off Reddit. Even the YouTube videos they made of their calls to the Happy Valley Dream Survey were deleted. There were theories that either something had happened to them or they had discovered something that forced them to distance themselves. Some believe all this is a prank, an elaborate art project, or a marketing stunt to get numbers. Whatever it is, make sure you don't give them your dreams. Gabriela Rico Jimenez. Gabriela Rico Jimenez was a popular 23-year-old Mexican model who had graced the covers of top fashion magazines like Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar. She was also known for her dedication to humanitarian work, collaborating with organizations like UNICEF to raise awareness about social issues. During her decade-long career, Gabriela walked the runways of the world's most prominent designers. Gabriela was well on her way to supermodel status when she disappeared from the face of the earth. She was last seen outside a luxury hotel in Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico in 2009. There was a party going on inside when Gabriela suddenly appeared. Far from looking like a model, she had on a ripped shirt. Like that wasn't worrying enough, Gabriela pleaded for her freedom while saying things that hinted at people she knew being silenced, like Juan Camilo Mourinho Terrazzo, a high-ranking Mexican politician who died a few months earlier in a bizarre plane crash. A police officer showed up, which only made her more agitated. She hurled accusations at the royal family, Disney, and Carlos Slim Dominique, one of Mexico's richest and most powerful men. As a crowd gathered, Gabriela accused them of living in a subterranean base, stealing children, and killing them. That's when the police closed in on Gabriela and hurled her away. Her vicious struggle with the officer was the last time she would be seen. Anyone who asked was told that Gabriela had been detained in jail before being transported to the psychiatric center of the Buenos Aires colony. She, they said, would be there indefinitely. 6 years passed before she was mentioned again, this time on a blog called The Black Manic. He gave the story of a witness claim who had seen her days after she was taken. They tried to talk, but Gabriela was giving cryptic answers about death. But she repeated that there was an underground base in Monterrey that had kids. Suddenly, some well-dressed men showed up and forcefully separated the two. They also asked what Gabriela had said. The next day, it was brushed off when they tried to report the incident to higher-ups. That was the last mention of Gabriela. There are many theories about what happened to her, from human to being silenced for her political activism. Today, everything about Gabriela has been scrubbed off the internet, almost like she never existed. The only thing left is the video of her screaming. Loren Scott's final Facebook post. On March 17, 2014, news broke that 49-year-old ex-model and fashion designer Ren Scott had passed away. An hour after her passing, as fans and friends mourned, a photo appeared on her Facebook page. It showed glowing dresses hanging from a tree. But it wasn't just Facebook. 2 strange tweets also appeared on her Twitter page. Had Ren passed, or was it a hoax? Ren Scott, born Luann Brambo, had just finished high school when her 6'3" frame got her scouted. In a flash, she was walking the runways of huge brands like Chanel and Thierry Mugler. Years later, Ren sent models down the runway after she launched her clothing line and dressed the biggest stars and celebrities from all walks of life, from Angelina Jolie to Michelle Obama. She also produced handbags, perfumes, and makeup. Wren's private life was on the up and up. She was in a long-term relationship with Rolling Stones lead singer Mick Jagger. Her public life was filled with designer outfits, high-class friends, and glamorous holidays to exotic locations on private jets. When Wren had to cancel her London Fashion Week show 2 months earlier, blaming it on fabrics arriving too late to make the samples, no one thought anything of it. But the truth was, behind the encores and Instagram likes, Wren was struggling. Her company was more than $6 million in debt and had been suffering from depression for a while. Things finally came to a head on March 17, 2014. Wren was found dead in her apartment, and the police reported no signs of foul play. So what about her tweets and the picture on Facebook? At first, people thought a sick prankster might have hacked her page. It was soon apparent that her account hadn't been hacked, and Wren had posted the tweets and pictures herself by scheduling them to be posted at a particular time. But fans continued to debate whether it was intentional or accidental. After all, nothing in the tweets insinuated what she planned. But the picture is different. The dresses hanging from the tree had haunting similarities to how she was found. Was the picture a macabre nod to what she planned to do, or just a coincidence? That's one answer that Wren took to her grave. The A-List. On March 31, 2004, an anonymous celebrity gossip site on a GeoCities page spilled the tea and dirt on some popular names in American households. After a disclaimer from the author that what they were about to reveal was based on rumor or could very well be true, the A-List began. It was a list of every popular celebrity at the time arranged alphabetically, giving shocking information and open secrets about them. Some were pretty tame, like Rowan Atkinson, whose crime was for being clinically depressed. Same for Isabella Adjani. Her crime was dating. But some were a lot more scathing and sounded like the author had a personal vendetta against a couple of them. More than 2,000 celebrities were listed and critiqued on the A-List. Some were complimentary, and some were pretty scathing. No one knew who the author was. The page started back in 2002 and was constantly updated with new information. At first, people thought it was a celebrity with too much time on their hands. However, the author revealed that they got their intel through emails from this link. From their partners and staff to the hotels and restaurants they frequented, making it that much harder to find out who they were. The GeoCities link died years ago, but curiosity about the A-List did not. In recent years and through the magic of the Wayback Machine, people are still entertained by this relic, especially since, based on recent scandals, some of the rumors were quite on the nose. U/Iceman Throwaway 123. In 2019, a Reddit user called Iceman Throwaway 123 shared a bizarre situation on the subreddit Too Afraid to Ask. He lives in a suburb just outside the big city, and like many places at the time, retail stores were closing down. Then suddenly, 12 convenience stores appeared. They all had variations of the same name, the same floor plans, and even sold the same products at the same prices. They also had a lot of employees, even though very few people shopped there. One day he decided to go into one. Immediately upon entering, all the employees stopped and stared at him as he shopped. Their products were resold from Walmart at higher prices. When he tried to pay, he was told they only took cash unless he bought products over $50. As if that wasn't weird enough, when he got home, he discovered that many of the products had long passed their expiry dates. Iceman Throwaway 123 also admitted that he felt something the town council was in on whatever the stores were doing. After he shared the story, several conspiracy theories swirled about what was going on, suggesting everything from money laundering to drugs and even human trafficking. But no one was ever able to verify anything. Not long after, Iceman Throwaway 123 stopped responding on Reddit. Did he lose interest, or did something even more sinister happen? It's been 5 years since his last comment, which has only fueled more intrigue and conspiracies about the bizarre convenience stores. Level 4, Purity Night. It's March 3rd, 1997, and the shocking disappearance end of 20-year-old Adrienne Purity Knight was sweeping through the internet. She was a student at the University of Mississippi who had been abducted just days after a stalker was chased off. He had left behind a camera that had her pictures. The story became popular because, to get leads, the police took to releasing information about their search on a website called crimescene.com. It included copies of interviews they had with family, friends, and suspects. The press knew Purity well. Her sister had been murdered at the same university, and her choice to attend the school made the headlines. A month into Purity's disappearance, police received a torn map and a picture of a woman in what looked like a box. Her parents also received a letter, all hinting that Purity had been buried alive. All efforts to find her got nowhere. Purity was found dead in a box 2 months later.
Stephanie! Travis, please!
She'd received air and food through an access passage, and there was no way to tell how long she had been kept alive. The box had many obscene things written in it. Her horrific death shocked many who had hoped that she would be found alive. Even the killer getting caught did little to get it off people's minds, including metal band Slipknot's lead singer Corey Taylor. In 1998, they made the song Purity and Frail Limb Nursery by sampling audio clips from the Crime Scene website. It became a regular setlist for the band. The following year, when they released their debut album, the songs were on it. That's when they got sued by crimescene.com, the same site that had published Purity's story, for copyright infringement. That's how many people learned that the entire story was made up. There was no girl in the box and no Purity Knight. The crimescene.com site was not a way for police to get tips on crimes. It was an early online game that encouraged readers to solve a made-up murder mystery. But the internet in 1997 wasn't what it is today, so it was easy to sell the story, and many believed it, including Slipknot. To avoid a lawsuit, they removed the 2 songs from their album. Purity was later released on another album, but Frail Limb Nursery, a sample of audio published on the site, never was re-released. Horton Mine. The Exploring Abandoned Mines and Unusual Places channel was a YouTube channel by a man named Frank, who went spelunking in desolate mines. Most of Explorer Frank's videos had him showing what some old mines looked like, but sometimes Frank got much more than he bargained for, like when he found a beat-up box with a red occult pentagram inside. When he opened the case, Frank found an old gun tucked inside.
Oh my god, it's a gun. Look at that. It's a little like, it's a revolver.
But this wasn't close to what happened in July 2013. Frank was visiting the abandoned Horton Mine in Pershing County, Nevada that day. The entrance to the cave was terrifying enough, but Frank powered through. The dark cave was filled with heavy metal chains hanging from the ceiling. Then, something bizarre started to happen. 2 metal chains appeared to be moving on their own. Then Frank remarked that it was getting colder and felt a presence. Meanwhile, one of the chains began swinging even more aggressively. That's when Frank decided to hightail it out of there. The spooky video earned millions of views as people tried to determine whether it was staged. Some footage was even featured on an episode of Strange Evidence on the Science Channel. The episode featured scientists and other specialists who analyzed it and determined it was not faked. It even appeared on the news. But Frank wasn't done with the Horton Mines yet. In June 2014, prompted by his followers, Frank returned to the mines, promising to explore it fully this time. It was still just as creepy as before. As Frank walked through, he noticed a mist was beginning to form. Frank powered through and made it to the end of the tunnel. Then he heard some noise from deep inside the mine. Whispers.
What the fuck is that?
A mysterious banshee-like shriek and loud screeching noises like a machine being operated. The terrifying sound had Frank rethinking his promise to his followers, and he ultimately turned around and left, promising never to return. Many skeptics believe it was all a hoax, but it's hard to argue with a video that's been authenticated. Barbie.avi. Barbie.avi is an unsettling video of an amputee model from the 1980s that surfaced online in 2009. It shows a blonde-haired woman in a room who seems to get increasingly frustrated. After the video appeared online, it was linked to a popular creepypasta about a guy who recovered the videos from an old computer. Another theory was that she suffered from BIID, body integrity identity disorder, a rare condition that causes people to remove body parts they don't believe belong on their bodies. For Barbie, it was her arm that she wanted to be taken off, and it seems she succeeded. But all these were just guesses, and the truth behind Barbie.avi remained a mystery for a long time. Then, in 2019, a Russian team on Reddit cracked the case. It started after a viewer wrote Tamara Klein on one of Barbie.avi's videos. They were also able to find out that the actual video was in 4 parts and featured Tammy talking about how she lost her arm. When she was 16, she had been arranging a sheet in the washing machine when the spin cycle suddenly started and twisted her arm. In 2009, one of these interviews was uploaded to an amputee video collection website called Free Amputee, which is how it ended up in the hands of whoever made the video. Mystery solved. Do you know what mystery I'd like to solve? Why you still haven't liked this video and subscribed? Up next, Kisaragi Station. In 2004, a disturbing exchange appeared on the online forum 2chan. A Japanese woman known only as Hasumi was broadcasting live messages about the bizarre events during her regular train commute. The train she followed home wasn't making any stops. She had tried getting the attention of the driver, but nobody answered. Then, just before midnight, the train stopped at the Kisaragi Station. Prompted by the 2chan users following her updates, Hasumi got off the train, but the station was empty. There were no taxis or people. She had called her parents to pick her up, but no one had heard of a Kisaragi station. Even the police accused her of pranking them. By this time, 2chan users were worried about her. It didn't help when one mentioned that Kisaragi could also mean demon. Hasumi decided she would follow the tracks and find her way home. Suddenly she wrote that she was hearing the sounds of beating drums and a ringing bell. Suddenly a voice screamed at her to get off the tracks. When Hasumi looked back, she saw an old, single-legged man who immediately disappeared. Hasumi instantly ran for the tunnel. On the other side, she met a kind man who offered to give her a lift to the closest station. 2chan users were immediately suspicious. They were right. Hasumi's next update was that the kind man had stopped talking to her and began muttering gibberish. By this time, Hasumi's battery was low. She decided to run for it the first chance she got. Whether she did or not was anyone's guess. Hasumi never made another post. There were many theories about Hasumi, the Kisaragi station, and what happened to her. She had been taken by evil spirits or gotten lost in a parallel world. Then, 7 years after the original messages, someone claiming to be Hasumi appeared online. She had walked into a light from the kind man's car, and when she came to, 7 years had passed. She was at a train station, and her parents were calling her from the car. There's no certainty she is the same person, but people came forward claiming that something similar had happened to them at the unknown Kisaragi station. Today, it is the stuff of urban legends, but while some people believe it was all made up, many live in fear of ending up in Kisaragi station and not being able to return. Hidogata commercial. In 2004, users of the 2chan message board started posting about creepy advertisements they had been unable to get out of their minds. One was the Hitagata commercial. The ad was 15 seconds long and showed two shadowy humanoids standing against a dark background. Then, two dings that sounded like a railroad crossing sign going off. At the same time, one of the figures disappears and reappears, while the other disappears with another two dings. As the animation repeats, the words, "Every 2 seconds someone dies," appears or is heard.
誰かが2秒ごとに死ぬ
This wasn't the first time this bizarre commercial was mentioned. 5 years earlier, on the same 2chan site, another user had made a post with two figures and a blinking sound in a weird commercial thread. There was no mention of railroad tracks. There are no copies of this creepy ad, and no one knows what exactly the advertisement was for. The most popular theories were that the Japanese Ad Council had either made it or that it was a program that aired in Japanese schools to teach children about safety on railroads. However, the Japanese Ad Council denied any involvement, and many of the films shown in schools aren't available anymore. 2 decades later, the Hitagata commercial has become an urban legend, but people are still searching for it. But skeptics online don't believe any such ad even exists. The theory is that 2 different ads were blurred into one. One was an ad for cameras and showed shadowy figures, while the second was railway related and had the same tagline, "Every 2 seconds, someone dies." But thanks to the Mandela effect, several people who saw one or both ads now believe they are the same. Level 5. Tsuki Project. In January 2017, an anonymous 4chan user called Tsuki began sharing about his new religious movement. Tsuki had a vision that humanity lived in a system called life, which was going extinct on July 1st, 2167. By registering their souls on a website called the Tsuki Project, Tsuki could transfer the souls of his followers from life to a higher dimension called LFE after they lose their lives in the real world. The deadline to register your soul was July 1st, 2017, and anyone who registered before then and died after that date would transcend to the next level regardless of how they died. Those who didn't would be lost forever. Some said it was a hoax, others a marketing stunt for releasing a game or television series. But in July 2017, the body of Jake Fear was found in a wooded area. There was no sign of foul play, and the cause was ruled as self-inflicted. Jake had deleted the records from his computer and left some handwritten notes with the letters LFE. It is generally believed that he was part of the virtual cult and was hoping to have transcended to the next level. The real purpose of the Tsuki Project is still unclear. However, some have said it was likely inspired by the 1998 anime Serial Experiment Lane. The picture of the main character Lane was even on the site's main page. The two also have the same themes of a person discovering a virtual world and uploading minds there. Did the anime inspire Tsuki? Well, he's not talking, and his true identity is still unknown. Yay video games. In September 2010, a question appeared on a gaming subreddit asking users to name their favorite mods for The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. The user Yay Video Games, aka YVG, was one of those who responded, but his reply was a bit confusing. When he was prompted to explain, he had the most bizarre response. When YVG was again asked to explain himself, he responded with the words, "US Teamworks by Always On DRM." For the next few hours, YVG spammed the thread with that same comment in different variations almost 4,000 times. Some even contained links to eerie images and a paper where he had written the phrase repeatedly. Because of the spamming, YVG's account was suspended and he couldn't post or comment. Shortly after, YVG deleted his account and disappeared. Several people thought he had turned into a troll, and for a long time the mystery of why he had done it confused many. After all, YVG was well known on Reddit and had gathered a high amount of karma on Reddit. It was confusing that he would become a troll in the strangest way possible. The incident even made it to the creepy subreddit. Several people became interested in discovering what had happened. One was So Legit HS. He linked YVG to 3 other users who seemed to use the same online lingo he used. The account he had the longest was Not Sure How Big You Are. Reading through that account, it showed more details into SVG's life. He had been homeless. He also suffered from chronic pain, depression, anxiety, and chronic fatigue syndrome. Because of that, SVG was prescribed some heavy doses of antipsychotics that gave him nightmares. He got hooked and escalated into self-dosing on opiates. While this explained why he might have made those cryptic messages, it only made more people worry about what happened to him. It was his best friend, Luke, who came out and confirmed many people's worst fears. SVG, who was named Lyndon, had passed away by his own hands. No one has been able to decipher what his cryptic message meant. Level 6. Charles Peck's posthumous phone calls. On the 12th of September 2008, around 4 p.m., a freight train in California's San Fernando Valley was hit by a commuter train. There were 225 passengers on board, one of whom was Charles Peck. For the next 11 hours, firefighters worked to rescue survivors and recover the bodies of those who died. Many families could only wait in horrified silence to learn if their loved ones had survived. Everyone except Charles Peck's nearest and dearest. Peck's son, brother, stepmother, sister, and fiancé all received calls from his cellular telephone. However, they never heard his voice, just static. When they dialed back, it went straight to voicemail. But it was enough to know that Peck was, in his way, trying to assure them he was all right. They received 35 of these calls over the next 11 hours and spent their time searching hospitals and trying to track him down. When they couldn't locate him, they informed the police and the rescue workers.
And we gave her a description, and they spent the next couple of hours looking for him.
The phone's signal led them to the first train. 12 hours after the crash, firefighters recovered Peck's body. At first, they thought he had just succumbed to his injuries, but a coroner's report revealed that Peck had been killed instantly. He had not made any of those calls. To add to the bizarre mystery surrounding Peck's posthumous calls, Peck's phone has never been found. Why You Never Became a Dancer. Why You Never Became a Dancer was a creepy video made with a similarly named song by White House playing in the background. It was a grainy, black and white 5-minute video that showed the edited face of an Asian woman making repeated mouth movements as a White House song in the background. Acid Blood Infusion posted the disturbing YouTube video on November 29, 2008 with the caption, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The video spread and even became a popular GIF. There were many attempts to reverse search the image with very little success, and for more than a decade, the question of who the girl was a mystery in the dark corners of the internet. Then, in 2022, a Japanese site called thetuburo.com received an unedited copy of the girl's face. She was identified as 21-year-old Rieko Takamura. Her picture had been found in the pages of an unknown book about Japanese serial killer Kiyoshi Okubo. Kiyoshi had assaulted and murdered Rieko along with 7 other girls over 2 months in 1971. He was sentenced to death. The tragedy surrounding Rieko's death added an even creepier spin to the Why You Never Became a Dancer video. Many were shocked by it, and some even called out Acid Blood Infusion, the video's creator. They later commented that he had made the video without knowing the source. Oh In-hae. Oh In-hae was a famous South Korean model and actress. In 2019, she started a YouTube channel sharing fashion and beauty tips. But at the age of 36, O took her own life. But some thought there was more to her death because of a video she posted online just 2 days before her death. The first red flag was that the video was numbered 48, even though it was her 46th video. Then, exactly 48 seconds into the video, it starts buffering. This lasted for exactly 1 minute and then stopped at 1 minute 48 seconds. During that moment, it captured O hitting her neck with a comb over and over again. When her fans pointed out the strange buffering, O liked their comments and included "Please skip over the buffering part" in the title. Just before she died, she also left an Instagram post where she accused someone of calling her just a body. Both the Instagram post and the video were deleted shortly after her death. Many now believe that the video was a sign of what O planned to do, but others are convinced that there might have been a supernatural element to her death, and she might not have taken her life after all. John Lang. In 2015, a California man from Fresno called John Lang opened a website and a YouTube channel to document how he had been stalked and harassed by the Fresno police. It started in 2009 after he uncovered a licensing plate scam involving the Fresno police. The officers would target low-income neighborhoods, pulling over drivers blocks away from where they claimed to have spotted the vehicles. Lang shared his findings anonymously on the Facebook page of the local newspaper, the Fresno Bee. But an employee with the newspaper called John Murray had leaked his information and IP address to the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. From that moment on, Lang revealed that. On his YouTube channel, he had 17 videos showing CCTV footage he had obtained, including footage of suspicious cars slowing down near his home, his dogs being conditioned so they don't raise alarms, gaps in his CCTV footage, and people he identified as Fresno deputies entering and leaving his property. There was even footage of people in a van taking videos of his home. But from January 15, 2016, Lang's Facebook posts became more alarming. He repeatedly put out posts insisting that Fresno police would try to end his life within days. He even asked armed anti-police activists to sleep over at his house. On January 17th, he wrote an open letter to the Department of Justice and the FBI expressing his fears that Fresno police were after him. Many people thought it was a hoax or that Lang was paranoid. 3 days later, on January 20th, he was dead. Firefighters had found him barricaded in his burning home. Lang's death was controversial, and it wasn't just because many believed the police had taken down Lang. The coroner's report revealed that he had started the fire and stabbed himself 3 times, including once in the back. People began questioning how he could have stabbed himself in the back. Then the police said the report was a mistake. There had been no stab wounds at his back, just his chest. Well, some believe that this was just a mistake and that Lang suffered from paranoid delusions. Others are convinced that he was murdered because of a government conspiracy. Level 7. Johnny Cashman Jr. Johnny Cashman Jr. was a 38-year-old living alone in his Lynchburg, Virginia apartment. He suffered from anxiety, bipolar disorder, and alcohol dependency. Yet Johnny was close to his family even though they lived in Maine and checked in on him daily. But on April 14, 2022, nobody could reach Johnny. His worried family members contacted the Lynchburg Police Department to conduct a welfare check because he had a pre-existing health condition. The officers later shared the devastating news that Johnny had been found dead in his home. Family asked if there was any sign of murder or violence, and the officers insisted it was natural causes, and that there was no sign anything suspicious had happened. All they saw was a pack of cigarettes. They also said the medical examiner said there was no need for an autopsy. Johnny's family believed the officers and had his body cremated. But just 10 days later, they would come to regret their decision. 10 days after the police had discovered his body, his ex-girlfriend got permission from his family to get some of her things from the house. She went in there with her mother. As she let herself into the apartment, they found it in disarray with shocking amounts of blood all over. After taking pictures, they found a neighbor with a Ring door cam. The door camera showed a perfectly normal Johnny going into his apartment and shutting his door. Then a minute later, loud male voices came from his apartment. At one point, Johnny's voice shouting, "Stop!"
Yo, what the f, dude?
8 minutes after Johnny entered his apartment, a different man calmly steps out. After taking a few steps down, he returned and used his sleeve to wipe the door handle before exiting. The ex-girlfriend shared the photos and videos with Johnny's family, who immediately contacted the Lynchburg police, but the detective said that they had thought that the blood was caused by Johnny vomiting all over the house. The footage identified the man as Stephen Church from Elizabethton, Tennessee. According to Stephen, Johnny had allowed him to stay in his apartment after he lost his job. On that day Johnny died, Johnny returned to the apartment drunk, and the two got into a vocal argument before Stephen left. He said he had wiped the doorknob because he had been arrested for aggravated robberies before. The Lynchburg police accepted his version of events and concluded that a fatal medical event caused Johnny's death, not the ex-burglar who was in his apartment when he shouted. After all the evidence to prove otherwise was in an urn. But some believe that Johnny might have suffered from a freak medical emergency and Stephen ran off so he wouldn't get implicated. However, Johnny's sister insisted Johnny had undergone a complete examination, including abdominal checks, 4 months before his death, and aside from his mental diagnosis, he had a clean bill of health. But as far as the police are concerned, the case is closed, and no one has ever been charged with Johnny's death.